Number 10. The Pleiades. The Pleiades is an open star cluster of over 800 stars, positioned 410 light-years away from us. The cluster is found within the Taurus constellation, and although there are nearly 1,000 stars in this group, there are 7 that stand out to us in the night sky. These are known as the Seven Sisters. Now, the Seven Sisters have been around for a long time, in both myth and reality. To the Greeks, the Pleiades represented the 7 daughters of Atlas and Pleione. After Zeus defeated Atlas in the war against the Titans, the god of Olympus sentenced him to hold the heavens on his shoulders. His 7 daughters were so distraught that Zeus gave them a place in the sky so they could be closer to their father. But this is only one of many stories about the Pleiades. The strange coincidence regarding this well-known grouping of stars is this. Just about every ancient society came up with some great legends surrounding these stars, and in every myth or legend created about them, the civilization named them the Seven Sisters, the Seven Maidens, the Seven Girls, and so on. For thousands of years, civilizations that had no connection to each other came up with the idea that these stars represented 7 women. And there is almost no way this could be purely chance. How could the Australian indigenous people have come up with the same myths as the Greeks about some random objects in the sky? Today's video was sponsored by Blinkist. If only you could buy time, right? Well, with Blinkist, you practically can. If you love to learn but don't have much time, thanks to Blinkist, you can access valuable knowledge and great ideas quickly. Blinkist is an app that takes the powerful ideas from nonfiction books and podcasts and turns them into text and audio explainers called Blinks. Blinkist makes it easy to capture important information quickly, and in just 15 minutes you can understand key ideas and insights for meaningful inspiration as you go about your busy day. It's not only a great life hack, but can also be very helpful for people that have trouble reading or concentrating for long periods of time. You can listen and read at the same time. There are more than 5,000 titles from 27 different categories. If you are traveling, then you can even download the Blinks or shortcasts in advance. I've been meaning to read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg for over a year now, but never even had time to open the book. I tried it out on Blinkist and was able to read the Blink version as well as check out the Blinks for 5 other books that have had many helpful tips to stay focused and organized and improve my day-to-day in general. This week I'll be checking out the history section. By using the link in the description below, you can now get a 7-day free trial, along with 25% off your premium membership subscription. Download the app, select your favorite titles, add them to your library, and sign up for the free trial and 25% off today. Number 9. Hercules. One of the most famous heroes in history may very well have been a real person. I'm talking about the Greek hero Hercules, also known as Hercules to the Romans and to the rest of the world today. But according to some historians, the legends of Hercules may have originated from one or more real people in the very distant past. In fact, most ancient legends start with real historical events and real historical people, but as these stories are repeated over time, they become far more dramatic. In the case of Hercules, it's believed his story may actually be the oldest in all of the world's mythology, with its root in the prehistoric Stone Age. But here's the deal. Hercules may not have actually lived in Greece. The legend of Hercules is strikingly similar to other heroes spoken of in Mesopotamia and other parts of the Near East. Experts think the old Stone Age heroes may have been exaggerated by the Mesopotamians, then handed down to the Greeks thousands of years later. It's why Hercules is always seen wearing animal skin and carrying around a club. He's literally a caveman. When the Romans came along, they took Hercules and made him their own, and through the last 2,000 years, the hero has continued to evolve. There is no real coincidence here, just the amazing truth of how one Stone Age person's incredible life became a legend, a myth, and a popular icon over 5,000 years after he lived. I'm sure whoever he was, he would be shocked to learn that his story had so much impact it even was made into a Disney movie. Number 8. The Central Pyramid. Most of us are familiar with the iconic Great Pyramid of Giza, an amazing technological wonder with mystery surrounding how it was built so long ago. But what almost no one knows is that the pyramid is also a geological wonder. It just so happens to be sitting in a rather geologically significant location, the exact center of the Earth. How this happened is beyond anyone's current understanding, but according to the experts, the Great Pyramid is one of the most accurately aligned buildings ever made by human hands. First of all, the pyramid faces due north with 3/60th of a degree of error. However, this small margin of error is likely because by the time scientists were able to study it, the position had shifted over thousands of years. The really amazing thing is that the pyramid is positioned exactly at the intersection of the longest line of both latitude and longitude, placing it at the bullseye or dead center of the middle of the planet. How did the Egyptians do it? For them to have done this on purpose would be practically impossible. The ancient builders not only would have needed a sophisticated understanding of mathematics, they also would have had to be experts in geometry. And to take it a significant step further, they would have needed to know the exact dimensions of the Earth. Considering many people thought the Earth was flat back then, this is highly unlikely, making this world wonder's location yet another amazing historical coincidence. What do you think? Were the ancient Egyptians that advanced? Let me know in the comments below. Number 7. Biblical archaeology. In 1846, an Assyrian obelisk was found in northern Iraq. On this obelisk was a reference to Jehu, the Hebrew king from the 9th century BC. It was the first time that an archaeological discovery corresponded to something written in the Bible. Ever since, more and more archaeological discoveries have corroborated stories, people, or events in the Bible. In fact, in 1959, Rabbi Dr. Nelson Glueck declared that not a single archaeological discovery has contradicted a reference from the Bible. What this means is that nothing ever found has disproved a biblical story. Archaeology has done nothing except confirm stories and myths spoken of in the most popular book ever written. Now, is this a coincidence? If it is, it's the biggest one in history. Back in 1968, an ancient home from the 1st century was identified as the real house of the Apostle Peter. And in 1990, there was an ossuary discovered with the inscription of the name Caiaphas, the high priest who instigated the execution of Jesus. In 2021, scientists learned of a cataclysmic event in which an asteroid decimated an ancient city from the Middle Bronze Age, which likely inspired the tale of the biblical city of Sodom. Dr. Stephen Collins, who was involved in the investigation, says the ancient city was literally melted by an exploding cosmic airburst, resulting in destruction equivalent to 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. But because the ancient people hadn't known that, they simply thought it was God smiting the whole city. Basically, all of these archaeological discoveries point to one truth. The stories in the Bible, though probably not 100% accurate, were often at least inspired by real historical events. Number 6. Egypt and Mesopotamia. Egypt and Mesopotamia rose to power just after the Neolithic period, with each civilization growing alongside a mighty river. And while there were some serious differences between Egypt and Mesopotamia, the largest being the fact that Egypt was governed by a single pharaoh, while Mesopotamia was a group of autonomous city-states, there were some real, coincidental similarities. The biggest similarities had to do with the culture of the civilizations. Both Egypt and Mesopotamia created their own systems of writing that looked eerily similar. Both these ancient places started writing using pictograms, and they used these pictograms primarily for keeping records. In both places at around the same time, they developed schools in which young boys were trained as scribes. They were taught how to use the pictograms, which ultimately turned into hieroglyphic systems of writing. The language was completely different, yet composed of the same characters and ideas. The thought was to take images that meant something and use them to convey information. But keep in mind, even though there are coincidences to be found between these civilizations, they were quite different. Even their religions were dramatically different from one another. Mesopotamians believed in angry gods that frequently plagued humanity with calamities, while the Egyptians believed in gods based on nature and the environment that granted prosperity and harmony to humans. However, it looks like they both strongly believed in the power of writing things down, or at least drawing them, for future generations. Number 5. Ancient tongues. The tongue is a very weird organ. In ancient Tibet, monks would stick their tongues out as a kind of greeting. It revealed to other people that you were good and that you weren't a demon with a secret black tongue. For cultures like the Maya and the Aztec, sticking out your tongue could be a gesture of violence. No matter where you go in the world, all ancient cultures associated sticking your tongue out of your mouth as a way of conveying meaning, which could be either a good thing or a bad thing. There is no better evidence of how important tongues were to ancient people than in the artwork they left behind. The Aztecs, Mayans, Celts, Indians, and so many others left behind countless depictions of gods and men sticking out their tongues. In fact, many statues of their gods have their tongues sticking out, usually as a symbolism for bloodlust. But even though the tongue has been so important for so long, archaeologists and historians still don't quite understand why. What do you think the human fascination is with sticking out your tongue? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. We have lots of videos like these coming up. Number 4. The Indian Sphinx. When we think of the Sphinx, we think of the huge mythical creature depicted sitting in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But even though Sphinxes are synonymous with Egyptian culture, they have been found in other places on Earth too. There have been plenty of ancient Sphinxes found throughout Greece, and this isn't really a surprising coincidence. Greece and Egypt have had a long and sometimes violent history, with their cultures and artistic styles often getting mixed together. A really strange coincidence is that in India, you can also find carved sphinxes from ancient times that look shockingly similar to the ones in Greece and Egypt. Particularly, you can find mysterious sphinx idols at the famous Nataraja temple in Chidambaram. The sphinxes here have the bodies of a lion and the faces of humans, believed to represent sacred and secret knowledge. They are located near the entrances of shrines and temple gateways, acting as guardians for these ancient sites. This is much in the same way that the Sphinx in Egypt guards the Great Pyramids. The big issue here is trying to understand how a hybrid beast made of a human and a lion was thought up by both Egyptians and the earliest Indians, and why each culture used these specific mythical creatures to protect their most sacred places. Number 3. Race of Giants. Humans have long told stories of giants walking the earth. The wildest part is that these stories of giants have been told by civilizations on all sides of the globe, at just about every major global intersection. Additionally, proof of giants has been found all over the world as well. For example, as recently as 2016, researchers in China uncovered giant human skeletons in over 200 tombs. These skeletons weren't too enormous, only up to a maximum of 6 feet 2 inches in height, but still, considering they were from 5,000 years ago, they were ridiculously tall. Even at just 6 feet, you would be insanely tall today. But in Neolithic China, where people generally only grew to be about 5 feet tall max, these people would have been considered literal giants. According to Feng Hui, head of the Shandong University's School of History and Culture, the individuals may have grown so large because they had access to better food than other people. However, if this were true, why aren't people growing over 6 feet tall today? Now we need to go across the planet to a favorite American vacation spot. Just 40 miles north of the Ozarks in Missouri, 7 skeletons were discovered in April of 1934. These skeletons measured over 8 feet in height, and it's not the only place in the Western Hemisphere where this kind of discovery was made. Giant skeletons have also been found in South America and Ecuador. So either there really was a race of giants once living on just about every continent, or there were just a few hotspots where giant people thrived and eventually went extinct. Number 2. The Code of Hammurabi versus the laws of today. The Code of Hammurabi was written sometime between 1792 and 1750 BC under the Babylonian king Hammurabi. Coincidentally, this very first complete written legal system had a lot in common with our own code of laws today. The code is a collection of approximately 282 rules, which established a standard of social interactions, with a set list of fines and punishments depending on what a person did. The code, so that nobody could miss it, was carved onto a giant black pillar, which was discovered by archaeologists in 1901. At the very top of the pillar was a carved relief of Hammurabi himself, receiving the list of laws from the Babylonian god of justice Shamash. And yes, this is quite similar to the story of Moses receiving the 10 Commandments in the Bible. It's just that this happened several thousand years earlier. The rest of the pillar, about 7 feet 6 inches of black stone, is covered in cuneiform script, detailing the complex legal system. And while some of the punishments for breaking laws were pretty harsh, like the guilty person having their tongue cut off or their hands removed, one thing is identical to the United States legal system of today. After a person was accused of a crime, even 4,000 years ago, they were considered innocent until proven guilty. But at the same time, if a man was caught stealing an ox, the punishment was that he would have to pay back 30 times the value of the ox. So not exactly like the laws of today, but pretty close. Number 1. Bucket and cone. What is the symbolic significance of the bucket and cone, depicted in art that is widespread throughout the ancient world? Archaeologists seem to have no idea. The bucket and cone are seen with deities represented in old Mesopotamian structures and in art from the more recent Neo-Assyrian Empire. There are dozens of reliefs showing a wide variety of deities holding what appears to be a pine cone in their right hand and a bucket or handbag in their left. Some have actually claimed these deities are the Anunnaki, a supposed race of ancient aliens that once enslaved humanity and forced our ancient ancestors to mine gold for them. But of course, there is no proof of this. A more logical explanation for the widespread bucket and cone symbolism is that they were both objects used in purification rituals going back over 5,000 years. The cone was dipped in a bucket of water, then shook over a person to purify them. There is a lot of speculation that the bucket and cone are clues to a more complex human history, but the truth is probably quite simple. The reason these symbols are seen throughout so much of the old world is simply because the purification ritual was quite popular. As for the cone, well, it's been a symbol of fertilization for thousands of years. What do you think is the meaning behind the bucket and the cone? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!